Welcome to Cattle Call here on the Rural Radio Network. I'm Susan Littlefield as we are broadcasting today from NCC The Classic. And pretty soon you're going to hear the auctioneer chant going on in the background as they get ready to sell all the different breeds of bulls and heifers. So a busy couple of days with cattle. So no surprise, Brad, that the whole talk has been what's been going on in these markets. As you can see, Brad Kooima is joining me with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. So Brad, let's talk about this cash market because that's been kind of the discussion. Then we'll get to the big news that happened here just in the last 24 hours. But first, we got to talk cash.
I think so too. Thanks, Susan, for having me on, making this work, even though you're busy working down there. Certainly the cash has been the driver, not just this week, but it feels like for several months already. As you have a futures market, and I think a futures speculator that probably feels like he needs more proof to improve his confidence and his desire to be long. Obviously the long speculator here the last couple, 3 years has had a couple of turns where he's had the chair kicked out from underneath him, the COVID pandemic, the fire, etc. So 162 late Friday, 164 on Tuesday was traded up here and right in my backyard. Talking to my brother, who is a fat cattle salesman, he assures me that he can get 164 today on the right kind of confinement cattle that would have some yield and wouldn't be dirty, as this area here continues to just be embattled with what the weather has been. So it feels like in the South, I know is asking 164, whether they'll get that far, we'll see. But it sure feels like we've got a good, solid, firm undertone and a producer here that's got a little arch in his back, bow in his neck, whatever, leverage. How about that for a word, right? Where he decides or dares to pass, he said he doesn't ask for more.
So as we look at everything that's been going on, I want to talk more about weather here in just a moment. But the big news that folks are talking about in the hallways of this cattle show has been Brazil and another case of BSE. Knowing that this happened back in 21 and what China's pullback reaction was, as you look at this whole picture, what does this potential case mean for potential sales for us out of the U.S.?
That's a good question, and I think I don't want to downplay it because it's certainly not bearish. It's a world market. There's really only a couple of places to get, there's only really one place to get truly the best beef in the world. And of course, that's from us. But so what we say transpire here, the last time this happened, Brazil was pretty slow to own up to the problem, caused maybe a little more issues, a little bit of more deterioration between them and their trade partners, i.e. China. This time, this is an atypical case. In other words, it means it's just a sort of a natural reoccurring. It's not from eating, bad feed or whatever, like initially our deal was a number of years ago. But it took China about a day or so to react, and they came up pretty strongly, I would say, in saying that we're going to suspend all beef imports from Brazil for now. They did not give a hard timetable. We think it's probably weeks, not months or years. But what I thought was interesting was they were, aggressive, or they're suspending it right now. I mean, yeah. So that shiploads of and they do, beef in transit in the middle of the ocean. They're saying, no, turn them around, send them back. So, yeah, will we notice a great big change? Probably not. But if they're looking to buy some beef somewhere, we've become the best place to buy it, and maybe really the only reliable supplier too. So yeah, I think that was part of the burst here that we had this morning here too. We had markets 50, 7,500 higher almost for a while. So
good optimism. Like you said, it could be short-lived, but hey, we've got some good high-quality beef. Why not buy it from us?
Yeah, the best place you could go to, absolutely.
But the biggest struggle, I think, right now for cattle producers is the fact that more snow has hit South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, even, parts of Iowa and Nebraska. Not what the cattleman needs right now, especially with calving getting ready to get underway, but for those cattle that are in the feedlot.
Well, I thought about how I was going to react to your question about this, because the last thing I want to do is act like up here in the north we're a bunch of whiners and we're a bunch of pansies and we can't take it, and yada yada. But okay, so coming out of New Orleans here just a couple of weeks ago and talking to my peers in Texas and Kansas, they have no idea what this winter has been like. None. And I think a lot of traders they're going, well, okay, well, we haven't heard anything about weather, so I guess it's probably pretty good by now, right? I'm sure they're fine now. These closeouts are probably pretty good now. And you could not be farther from the truth, Susan. The closeouts and I'm a feeder, right? And nobody makes me, so you don't have to, I do it because it's a sickness, I guess, because I want to. But the closeouts the last week and a half are the worst of the whole year, the worst. These cattle haven't regained any of their performance. They're still not growing. They're still dying. The cost of gain is off the charts. Cost of gain is probably as bad or worse than what the market is at. Talking about above 160 cost of gain. So, we're not out of the woods here. And yeah, it's 14 below regular temperature and it's windy. And we just had 10 inches of snow. So, it's not in Kansas, but across the northeast part of Nebraska and into northwest Iowa, southeast South Dakota, wherever there's cattle in that neck of the woods, certainly got hurt again.
Do you see some hedge pressure for this market?
We've seen it, and frankly, I'm encouraging it a little bit from my hedge clientele. You can tell that I'm bullish in the short term, but the weather is not going to affect August cattle. I mean, that's a whole nother ballgame. Yes, we killed cows at a record pace. You and I have had a whole special show about that, right? Record slaughter. Yes, we killed all those cows, but we put all of their calves on feed. Okay. I mean, there's cattle for the summertime. August cattle here this morning made an all-time high. There's never been an August cattle futures contract this high as we were just now a little bit ago. Higher, in other words, than the high that we made in 2014. So if you're a hedger, and I am, the summer months, I'm not crazy about hedge in Feb and April. Feb's are almost gone, and April's, I think the numbers are super tight. But the summer month stuff, whether you're an option guy or whatever, I would take a hard look. 160 in August cattle has only ever happened one time before.
Well, lots of great stuff that we looked at this week, Brad. We'll see what the markets bring. Hopefully some stronger cash as we head into next week and the last week of February.
Yeah, I think we will. It's hard to believe it, but I think everybody around here is ready for some spring and some mud, I imagine.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't think we're going to hear anybody complain about a little mud in the feedlot. Yes. Thanks for joining us this week.
Of course.
Of course, we want to remind folks commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss not suitable to all investors. And that's been this week's Cattle Call from NCC The Classic on the Rural Radio Network.